פנו יחידו למען לא יאבד כל המאמין בו אליי.
Hello. Good evening. Welcome to Zion's Banner. I've had a little trouble this evening. I hope that you can all hear me. I have to use OBS, and OBS decided to have a problem tonight. But I'm a little better with OBS, so I've learned something. There's a few things that are different tonight as I bring the Facebook folks on and apologize to them for being late. Welcome to Zion's Banner. I've had a little trouble this evening. Yeah. I hope that you can all hear me. I have to use OBS, and OBS decided to have a problem tonight. But I'm a little better with OBS, so I've learned something. There's a few things that are different tonight as I bring the Facebook folks on and apologize to them for being late. Yes. So let me tell you a little bit about the things that are different. Now I'm getting a little bit of an echo here, so I'm going to try to drop my sound level just a little bit so I don't hear myself so much. Yep. And you have your own email now, folks. I did this deliberately. You can email me comments, ideas, or comments or ideas or future topics. I'm working on it. There we go. That should do it. You have your own email now, folks. So, if you have ideas for the show, you have questions that didn't get answered, you have comments that you want to make, you can send stuff directly to Zion's Banner, and I'm going to type this out and put this right up for you, at gmail.com. And so that is your own little spot there where you can send information, and I'm really looking forward to having your comments. Rebecca, you've been wonderful in providing me great stuff, ideas for the show. And so you now have that ability. We also want to press joining our team. This is Faith Missions. We've taken a hit. Most of you guys are regulars. You're great. You're my audience. I don't want to press you, but I do want to let any new folks that join know that we have a website, and if you click join our team, you have some options there. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to get better with this streaming events, but I want to start using events to let you guys know. Joining our team. This is Faith Missions. We've taken a hit. Most of you guys are regulars. So I'm going to bring it down as far as I can. I'm a little worried about going down too far. Let me know if you can't hear me. These are pretty intense headphones. And so if you can't hear me, I need to know about it. But that's as low as I dare bring it down. And so that's where we're at tonight. So I want to do more of this stuff where I set up the events ahead of time so you folks now know about it, and you can go ahead and let others know about it. And so that's kind of where we're at. I have a really excellent resource for you tonight, and I will let you see that shortly. I'm going to go ahead and start getting ready to do tonight's lesson. And then with the other material, I will go ahead and show you an excellent resource. It's about $17. It is a real keeper for your library if you're interested in Jewish objections and even the Old Testament foundations for what we believe. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. There we go. And I'm going to start us on our lesson tonight. Becky had asked about Metatron. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Metatron. Now, it shows my high speed down a little bit. So there's going to be a little bit of a break here. And you should be getting the switch here. But I don't see it happening for you guys. There we go. And I'm going to start us on our lesson. There we go. We're going to talk about Metatron, the angel of the Lord, and pre-trinitarian Jewish thought. There are foundations laid for the Trinity in the Old Testament, and there are even foundations laid for the Trinity that especially occurred during the Second Temple era, right before Jesus walked the earth. So what God was doing was setting everything up so that when the Trinity was further revealed, all the foundations would be there, and the topic related to God's nature would be like regular table conversation. And so this is so exciting and so neat that it really is worthwhile for us to spend time on and go ahead and see together. So I'm just positioning things a little better here so that you guys hopefully can see this. And every so often Windows decides to take up more room than I like. So let's talk about what we're going to be discussing. Now you guys are free at any time to jump in with questions. And then if there's stuff that comes up and ideas or questions that I don't even get to, that's what that email address, sciencebanner@gmail.com, is all about. And so I'm excited, and I want your ideas. I want your feedback. We want to keep making this better and better. This particular program runs somewhere between teaching and apologetics. It's a both and. There's exegesis, and then there's apologetics that goes on at the same time. And what I want to kind of do for you is dovetail the exegesis with the apologetics. So let's talk about what we're doing tonight. And so I'm excited, and I want your ideas. I want your feedback. We want to keep making this. Yeah, I don't quite know. Nate, do you have an idea what to do? I'm using OBS here. I can go and check my mic and make sure that it's under advanced audio settings. No, I don't see anything out of order here. Everything's checked. Can you hear me okay? And we'll just go with it. I can kind of bring the feedback down a little bit, or I can bring you guys up. Oh, maybe because the desktop audio is going on at the same time. Let me fix that. That should be gone now, and we should be good as far as feedback. I'm going to bring this up. No, I get the echo, so it's not the desktop here. That's the problem. Okay, we're going to go with it, okay? OBS is acting a little weird tonight, so I'll have to do a little fine-tuning here. Okay. OBS is a little weird. Sometimes it'll pick up, and I'm using a pretty good mic. Okay. So let's go through what we're going to be discussing tonight. First of all, we're going to discuss why this discussion of the angel of the Lord and Metatron is really so important, and I already started hinting at that. Ideas don't come from nowhere, and theology isn't built from nowhere. And God did a whole lot of stuff behind the scenes to really set things up. You have to understand that Jews lived and died on the fact that there was one God. And so as more information comes in, as God gives more revelation, what he did is he preloaded foundations, not only in the Bible, but he even began to cause people to explore the nature of the Godhead before Jesus comes on the scene. And so he's doing that ahead of time, and so this is also important. And so we're going to discuss why this is important, but you're getting a feel for why it's important anyway. But we're going to discuss apologetically why it's particularly important. We're going to discuss who Metatron is. So you're going to know who Metatron is in Jewish thinking in particular. And my thing just jumped. Sorry about that. And then we're going to see how the angel of the Lord lays the foundation, particularly for the Trinity. And this is not going to be unimportant stuff here. In fact, let's go to some of the issues here. On top of the fact that this lays foundations for the Trinity and it shows this trajectory theologically that God is building, you have to understand that modern Judaism does not allow for a complex unity at all in the Godhead. And so these foundational things become important in dealing with anti-missionary arguments from the Jewish side, and they allow for demonstrating there is a consistency between belief in Messiah and previous Jewish thought, especially prior to the cementing of rabbinical Judaism. So what this really ends up demonstrating is that really you can say to your Jewish friend, look, I don't believe anything contrary to your scriptures, and I don't believe anything contrary to what Jewish thought has allowed at a period in its own history. And so that's where this gets important from the Jewish side. And so that's where we're at. So let's talk about the other place that this is real important. It's Maimonides, and I'm just dovetailing on what I just said a minute. It's dovetailing on Maimonides is the guy, and you don't see Maimonides yet, but you will. He's the guy that actually really ends up cementing that there is a total disallowance for any sort of plurality in the Godhead. And he's the guy who really does this. And so that's why Maimonides becomes important. But this isn't just important for Judaism, it's important for Islam. One of the big objections in Islam to the Trinity is that it's shirk, it's blasphemy, it's making partners with Allah. And so that's where this kind of comes in. And so from that standpoint, it really deals with Islamic apologetics too. Now, the angel of the Lord isn't going to be that great, but it's still useful even for Islam, because if you can find passages that the Quran uses, and it does use some, you can kind of dovetail it. And I was able to do this with the burning bush when I did some mosque evangelism, and it's still good to this day as far as other things. So, I'm having a little trouble seeing your questions right now for some reason that I can't, for the life of me, comprehend. So, I'm not quite sure why it did what it did. So, for some reason, it wants me to put an emoji on, and I don't want to put an emoji on. So, I'm just going to say hi and press in and hopefully get you guys back, and I still can't. Oh well. I kind of wish sometimes that, there we go. Okay. So, it's also a foundation for the Trinity. We're going to discuss that too. We're going to discuss Metatron and how he relates to the angel of the Lord. I'm a little choppy tonight because I'm like trying to deal with these tech things, and they always kind of throw me because I'm getting good with it, but when the computer does something I don't like it. So, that's kind of where things are there. So, who's Metatron? Well, Metatron is going to be on your screen in just a second here. Metatron really comes from the Greek or Latin and it's a name of an angel found only in Jewish literature. Where this becomes important is there were actually rabbis that saw this angel as sort of a divine figure. And so the rabbis named here, he's kind of early on in Jewish literature. I don't know, we have a Talmudic passage here in which he's mentioned. Elisha ben Abuyah. And so he believed that there were two powers. Now, he didn't believe there were two gods as much as he believed that there was this lesser divine figure that actually existed. Now, you got to understand where we're coming from here. Because what this does is this lays a foundation for the Trinity that's incredible. And we're talking about a rabbi here. Now, later on, this becomes a problem. Because as this guy's expositing this doctrine, Christianity starts, and it goes ahead with its claim that Jesus is the Messiah. And so there's a lot of scholarship going on now that demonstrates very clearly that what ended up happening is, as the rabbis wanted to differentiate the Judaism that they were, in their mind, protecting from Christianity, which came out of that Judaism, I can see you now. Thanks, Rebecca. Just screen went kind of boom. What it demonstrated was the rabbis wanted to go ahead and differentiate what the forming rabbinical Judaism from Christianity. And so they began to resist anything that even looked like plurality in the Godhead. And so, oh, excellent. I don't know who's there, but and so they begin to fortify things against the doctrine of two doctrines. And so I ended up quoting Isidore Singer again, the Jewish Encyclopedia, that says that this Metatron has God's name. He actually has the same name as God. He has God's name, but he may not be worshipped, for the same passage says, "Exchange me not for him." Dialogue between a heretic and a Babylonian teacher. By the way, heretic there might very, very well mean a Jewish Christian. And so this issue becomes a real issue, because what you start to see is Metatron gets associated as a quasi-divine figure. And there starts to be teaching that there's this other divine figure, but Judaism believes in one God. And so rather than go with the Trinity, the rabbis harden things and say, no, we want to differentiate ourselves from these guys coming up. And so we're going to go ahead and totally make the doctrine of two powers heresy and differentiate ourselves from them. So the arguments in Judaism, between Judaism and Christianity, rabbinical Judaism and Christianity, one person, Amy Downey, a friend, fellow worker who I've gotten the chance to meet, said that there are two basic objections to Christianity within Judaism: the Holocaust and the Trinity. Now, I think that's an oversimplification, but I think she's really onto something. And so the two powers gets reacted against by the rabbis and becomes considered heresy. They didn't want plurality in the Godhead because that sounded too much like the Trinity. So they resisted the idea of two powers and evidence for plurality and created a wall. You know, like the Great Wall of China, they created this wall. Now, the problem is, in the rabbinical writings, Metatron is this really weird figure. He really is. He is named or related to Enoch in the book of Jubilees and Second Enoch. And you have there 8:2. Although elsewhere he's referred to as Michael. In another Targum, substitutes the name of Michael for Metatron, which is found in other sources. In Hebrew writings, Metatron fills the role of Enoch in the Apocrypha as bearing witness to the sins of mankind. Metatron isn't just associated with one figure. That's part of the problem with Metatron. Now we're going to see that Metatron does relate in some of the rabbinical writings to the angel of the Lord. So I hope you're following this. By the way, the PowerPoints have been posted, so you can always go back. You can share those PowerPoints. You can pull points from those PowerPoints. You can pull references. That's why I leave the citations in. So you can actually pull the references. If you're talking to your Jewish friend, you can go back. If you're typing an email, you can pull the reference in and say, look, this is where I got the reference from. Okay? Now, why would I equate the angel of the Lord with Metatron? Well, if you go to Exodus 23:21, God speaks of his name being in him. Now, we're going to see that the angel of the Lord is anyone down here? I didn't pull my Bible up, but I will go ahead and pull something off here in a minute. If you go to Exodus 23:21, I'm going to want to go there for a second. So I'm going to try to pull something off here and close something and bring something up. You may hear a brief little bit of music there. That's my friend Logos. And I'm going to pull Logos up here, but you're going to go there to Exodus 32:21. We're going to talk about it because Metatron is associated with that passage. This is going to take a second because I'm pulling some RAM to do this, okay? Sometimes I wish Windows had bigger screens or you could organize them just a little bit better. But Metatron is associated with that angel, which is the angel of the Lord. So what we're going to see is, though, even in the rabbinical writings, although Metatron's associated with a lot of characters, when you tie Metatron in with Exodus 23:21, you end up tying Metatron in with the angel of the Lord. So that's kind of where we're at there. I'm going to actually grab my Bible because Logos is taking too long. So there's going to be radio silence for just a second here because my cord isn't that long. I'm back. And now Logos goes up and decides to boot for me, right? Okay, so we're going to go to the passage here because I actually want to see the passage. Good old Logos is not responding tonight. So I'm going to Exodus 23:21, and we'll look at this together. Okay, if you look in 20, behold, I send my angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Beware of him and obey him. Do not provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Now, this is a reference to the angel of the Lord, and it's associated with Metatron. So even though Metatron is like lots of different things, what's really interesting here is that Metatron is associated with the angel of the Lord by being associated with this passage. You see what I'm doing here? So he's a strange character in Jewish rabbinical writings, but there are places where Metatron is actually connected with the angel of the Lord. So let's keep moving here. Okay? And you see the same passage. And I actually could have just used the slide, but if you're ever using this, you can actually pull the slide up. By the way, those PowerPoints are useful. If you want to share them with people, please go ahead and share them with people. If you have a Sunday school and you want to take your notes and do this, the only thing I ask is tell them about Zion's Banner. let them know about Zion's banner and encourage them to come and to find out more about us, because we really long for people to go ahead and see things. So let's talk about the angel of the Lord now. Now this gets pretty clear. Now I did this deliberately. This is just fun. Can I go to a Jewish encyclopedia that actually admits that the angel of the Lord is connected with deity? This is just really kind of nice. Because, see, I'm not going to some saved source. I'm going to regular Jewish scholarship to go ahead and demonstrate this, okay? This is fun. When you in apologetics can go to the person that you're defending the faith before and use their own writings to build a bridge, I mean, that is apologetics extraordinaire. And that's what you want to do when you can do it. So I went here, okay, to this Jewish encyclopedia, and I said, well, let me look up angel of the Lord. Let's have some fun with this. In earlier biblical writings, Melech, now they do the Yahweh thing. I don't know why. I don't even know why they did a W there. The messenger of the Lord occurs chiefly in the singular and signifies a special self-manifestation of God, where the angel of the Lord says, I am God, and they're referring to Genesis 31, 13, 11 through 13. So let's go to Exodus 31, 11 through 13. Does the angel of the Lord actually refer to himself as the Lord? I mean, now remember, this is an unbelieving Jewish encyclopedia here. Okay? So how are you going to get around this stuff? Okay? Well, this is kind of interesting. The Jewish encyclopedia actually pulls this out here. Okay? And I'm just going back here and seeing what they're seeing. 11 through 13, Genesis 31. Watch this. This is really fun. And the angel of the Lord spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, I am here. And he said, lift up your eyes and see, all the rams that leap on the flock are streaked and speckled and gray spotted. I have seen what Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. Well, clearly it's the Lord that met with Jacob at Bethel. And the Jewish encyclopedia is saying this is a manifestation of God. Now, what they're going to say is this isn't a real angel. We're going to see that this is a real being called the angel or messenger of the Lord. He's associated occasionally with Metatron, but this is like this great foundation here. But I wanted you to see a Jewish encyclopedia admitting deity associated with the angel of the Lord, because it's just too fun. And I couldn't resist. Now, I call this Jewish foundations of pre-trinitarian thought, because this is Jewish discussion, this is Jewish thought, it's before the Trinity is clearly revealed, but it's foundations in Jewish thinking and in the scriptures given to the Jewish people that is pre-trinitarian thought that makes a foundation for the Trinity, right? Now, this is where it gets fun. I'm going to introduce you to one of these sources. This is a guy named Daniel Bayarin. Daniel Bayarin is just fun, because Daniel Bayarin is arguing that Judaism hardened the walls between itself and the growing Christian movement that came out of Judaism by de-allowing certain doctrines to be considered, emphasizing certain things, and polemically attacking certain things. And that there was much more of a theological trajectory between Second Temple Judaism and the beginning of the movement of believers in Messiah than would first be imagined. So this is out of an article he ended up doing. Actually, it's from a book. No, I'm thinking it's a journal article. I'm sorry, it's a journal article. And so he says, now he's going off of the work of an earlier man named Alan Siegel, who is admitting the same stuff. And he says, I would rewrite Siegel's sentence in my own terms in the following way. There is significant evidence, and covered in large part by Alan Siegel, that in the first century, many, perhaps most Jews held a binitarian doctrine of God. This Jewish doctrine, named minut by the rabbis as an important part of the project of constructing Jewish orthodoxy, is separate from Christianity. Now, let me translate this because this is juicy stuff here, okay? He's taking Siegel's writing and he's saying, look, what Siegel's uncovered indicates that most Jews in Jesus' day believed that there was some sort of distinction in the Godhead. They were binitarian, not Trinitarian. Do you realize what that's saying? That's saying that Jewish thought not only allowed, but there were many Jews during that period that Jesus walked the earth that believed that there was some sort of twofold distinction within the Godhead that was personal. They were virtually binitarian without thinking about it. Now, the term minute I had to define for you. But what he's saying is the Jewish doctrine was named a heretical view by the rabbis to disassociate what they believed from Christianity. In other words, they artificially named this doctrine a heresy just to separate themselves from the Christian movement and call it illegitimate. Min means kinds, and it was used of Jewish believers that were still in the Jewish community at one point. And so, I was once talking and I said to somebody, look, if I was running into a Jewish person who said, look, you're an apostate, I'd say, no, I'm not apostate. I'd say the worst you can call me is a heretic. Because as far as rabbinical Judaism is concerned, I am a heretic according to rabbinical Judaism. However, don't you dare call me apostate, because I have never left the God of my forefathers. So, this is by Yaron. We're going to talk more about him. But him and Siegel have been incredible in doing this. Now, we know the angel of the Lord, even by a Jewish encyclopedia, is considered deity. Right? Now, here's where it gets fun. Is the angel of the Lord separate or distinct from the Father? Well, there are all sorts of times when it seems like the angel of the Lord is being distinguished. Now, this is just one of them. I have Exodus 16:11. This is the incident with Hagar. And the angel of the Lord said to her, yes, Roxby, I woke up because I never realized these connections were here. And as I began to look into Jesus, I began to see this incredible one story unfolding and that all the connections were there. And it is exciting. It is why Zion's banner exists, to make much of Messiah in God's big story. So here's what we got. The angel of the Lord's talking to Hagar, and he says, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call him Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. Now the Lord is named as hearing your affliction, but the angel of the Lord, speaking of himself separately, says to her, behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son. Now that's evidence of distinction. So the angel of the Lord seems to be deity. He seems to be distinct. He's associated with Metatron part of the time, but some of the time he's not. The Lord heard the voice of the lad, and then the angel of the Lord called to Hagar out of heaven. These always fascinate me. Most times they're treated as allegorical, but something cool is happening here. I love when I see what seems to be an exchange between the father and son hinted at in the scriptures. Okay, what ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. And that's just continuing in the same passage, but you see God calling out of heaven. You see the angel of the Lord saying that the Lord has ended up indicating something. And you see them being treated as separate beings. Okay? Here's another one. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw what? The angel of the Lord. Why does it say the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the Lord standing in the way? If the angel of the Lord, you have the Lord's opening Balaam's eyes, but it doesn't seem to indicate that the Lord's standing there. Now, I know someone could argue in Hebrew that somehow it's understood, but I think you could just as easily read it the other way. And he falls on his face in front of the angel of the Lord. Angels supposed to accept worship? No, they're not. Not the ones we're interested in ending up having help us, right? This is a passage I love. I love it because I got to preach it when I was in seminary. We were doing Hebrew translation class. We were asked to do this, and I got so excited about seeing the divisions. This is one of the messages I do in churches when I can do it, because it came out of the devotional I got from observing the distinctions in the passage in the original Hebrew. Okay? So let's see where we're at here. Now, you want a really cool passage as far as demonstrating the Lord. This is the beginning. Now, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame in the midst of the bush. And so he looked, and behold, now who's in the midst of the flame? You got to pay attention to who refers to who here, right? He looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but it was not consumed. Moses said, I will turn aside to see this sight, why the bush does not burn. And so when the Lord saw, he had turned aside. I'm sorry, who's in the midst of the bush? The angel of the Lord, who is also deity. So God gives these wonderful hints and lays this foundation that gets even built upon during the Second Temple period. My Jewish friend says to me, look, the Trinity is some sort of pagan idea added later on. No, it is not. Because as Boyarin pointed out, many Jews during the Second Temple period were binitarian. The hardest person in the Trinity to demonstrate the deity of in Jewish thought is the Holy Spirit. Because really demonstrating the deity of Messiah and the Son is far easier in Jewish thought than demonstrating the divinity of the Spirit. So, this is the binding of Isaac. We talked about how often this is read, right? This is read every morning in the prayer book. And in the midst of this passage, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham. This is Exodus 22:15 through 17. This is like a key text. You want to find a text that Jews get exposed to a lot? Find one that's in the prayer book. Because Orthodox Jews, observant Jews, Harari Jews pray that Siddur 3 times a day. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time. By myself I have sworn, says the Lord. Because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will bless you and multiply. I will multiply your descendants as the stars in the heaven and the sand on the seashore, and your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. Wait a minute. By myself I have sworn, says the Lord. The angel of the Lord is swearing by himself, saying he's the Lord. I mean, this is incredible stuff here. Now remember, Metatron is sometimes associated with the very passages that the angel of the Lord is associated with. And the angel of the Lord is deity, and he seems to be distinct from the Father. So we're getting set to go to our section here where I talk to you about Boyarin's books, because he's done an incredible amount. But let's just say that Metatron is a shadowy figure who seems to be an angel who's associated with different characters, because the rabbis like to argue and speculate, particularly about angels during the Second Temple period. Metatron is associated with the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord is deity. The existence of the angel of the Lord as deity indicates Jewish binitarianism and is a foundation for pre-trinitarian thinking, and it demonstrates the Trinity is consistent with the Tanakh or Hebrew Scriptures. This is not a pagan doctrine, folks. Before 300 AD at Nicaea, the foundations were laid before the Second Temple period. God put hints of the Trinity. During the Second Temple period, he laid foundations for this type of Trinitarian thinking. Then Jesus comes and the Trinity is fully revealed, and all of this happens before 300 AD. Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a leg to stand on. Those who deny the Trinity don't have a leg to stand on. And by the way, black Israelites, if they really want to be Israelites, should be willing to accept these hints. And you need to be able to say to them, I'm sorry, the angel of the Lord appears to be God, and God appears to be God. If you don't believe in the Trinity and you don't believe in the Hebrew Scriptures, well, then what type of Israelites are you claiming to be? The angel of the Lord with the binding of Isaac can be used with Islam also. You just have to say Abraham's son was bound, and the angel of the Lord called out to him and said, by myself I've sworn. But it was God who swore to Abraham. And in Judaism, this can be pulled. So we're not done with tonight. We're just done with the PowerPoint, but I hope you got a lot out of it. Look, I want you to understand these foundations were there. They were already laid. The hints were there. Those hints were built upon. Then the Trinity was revealed. Then people had to spend time trying to find language to describe it. And all of this happens within the space of 300 AD. And it's set and it's there, but it's a continuing story from the hints in the Old Testament to the foundations during the Second Temple period to the clear revelation and of the Trinity that's revealed afterwards to finding the language for it. And it's just all part of one big, huge thing. Let's talk about some great resources for you this evening. Now, if you're on, I did this deliberately, okay? I did this deliberately so you could see it either way, okay? And I did the resources so that you can have them as part of the thing here, where if you're on YouTube, you can see it, okay? But if you're not on YouTube, I'm going to flash this in front of you so that you can actually end up seeing it. This is a great book, okay? Now, you're probably not seeing it on your screen yet. We're having the slowies tonight, okay? But I'm also holding it up. You'll see it in a minute. It's called The Jewish Gospels by Daniel Bayarin. This is not a believing guy. Now, I don't like all of his stance. He's been a little controversial in some other areas. But what you need to understand is what he does with this book. It's absolutely incredible. I just want to read you one passage from this. This is so cool, okay? The ideas of the Trinity and incarnation, or certainly the germs of ideas, were already present among Jewish believers well before Jesus came on the scene to incarnate in himself, as it were, those theological notions, taking up his messianic calling. This is an unbelieving Jewish guy saying this. And his entire book draws on these foundations that Christianity had waiting for it when Jesus appeared on the scene. In other words, Jesus comes, he reveals the Father to us, but before he even does that, there are these foundations, and he talks about the spiritual trajectory that exists between Second Temple Jewish thought and Christianity. This is absolutely incredible stuff. How much does this incredible book cost? Well, Amazon has it for 17 bucks. I've got 3 books on my list right now. I can't afford to get them. This isn't one of them because I've already done it. Okay? But this is a $17 book, and it's going to draw the connections. He situates Christianity's radical departure from Judaism within Jewish tradition and Jewish struggles. He does this not to serve up a bitter pill of particulars to Christians' indebtedness to Judaism, but rather to open doors for believers, agnostics, and atheists of whatever denomination, illuminating how religious tradition partner with one another in history. That's Tom Kushner, who's saying nice things about David David Boyarin. John Collins Holmes, professor of Old Testament at Yale Divinity. Boyarin's book goes to the root of the relationship between Judaism and Christianity and raises profound questions as to the core ideas of both traditions. So, this is an incredible book that is available for about $17. It's not a real hard read, but it's a good book. I know we had a lot of confusion tonight. I'm going to keep scheduling these as events, but we're going to get better. I now know which key out of the 3 keys that show up in the setup to put in my OBS. So we should be better off next week than we are this week. Remember, if you have any questions, I'm going to leave time for them. But if we don't get to them tonight, Zion's Banner at Gmail. You can email me those questions. I'm looking for more ideas. Rebecca has been the main idea engine for wonderful ideas for shows, but I know Roxby, and she's an incredible gal. If she has some questions out there, there are a few other folks who have joined us tonight. Hey, get in, get some ideas, get some questions going. I love it. Nate, if you're still there, if there are any questions that come up, any ideas, anything that you would like covered along these sorts of lines or even outside of these sorts of lines, I am open to ideas because I love spending time with you and being able to talk about these things. So you are welcome to chime in. Anyone new that comes in, it's good to see 6 people watching. Invite others to watch, to come up with ideas. Have they ever had questions about Jewish apologetics? Have they had some questions about Muslim apologetics in some key areas? There are some that specialize in that more than others. Do they want to know more about the connections between New and Old Testament faith as it relates to apologetics? Have them join, have them bring ideas, and we will have a wonderful time together as we end up discussing these things. Well, I'm glad that it all worked out eventually. I am sorry for the delays and the jumping around. We did not get a lot of Facebook folks, but you, faithful folks, have been on tonight. Let's expand our base. You can feel free to be a part of getting on a lot of different ways. Let me open it up for those that don't want to mail. Are there any questions that came up particularly tonight? And hopefully you got a new appreciation for the Trinity and all the trouble God went to actually make this clear to us about himself. So I welcome any thoughts. Okay, questions are out of desperation, LOL. Oh, yeah, but Rebecca, your desperation is my opportunity and your opportunity to learn even more. Roxby, what did they say in another chat? You've got me really interested. If you want to type it in or send it, if you don't mind other people seeing it, or you want to think through it, that's great too. But do not look at your desperation. Becky, I don't look at it as desperation. I look at God training you. See, that's not desperation. I learn more as I'm challenged. So your desperation is God's opportunity. Yes, Roxby, that is true. The rabbis have 2 takes on the let us make man in our image in Genesis 1:26. One take is the plural of majesty or the majestic plural. By the way, Muslims use that a lot. Ahmed used it. The other is that he's speaking to the angels in the heavenly council. So you're right. That's one of 2 things the rabbis do. Is the Holy Spirit described in the Old Testament? Yes. But if you think there is a lot of information about the Son, the Spirit is even a little more shadowy in the Old Testament. And so he's really the hardest, because I can find passages that demonstrate deity for Messiah. I can find the Shekinah glory in the angel of the Lord, but the Spirit is actually the hardest. And really, without the New Testament, that one's really difficult. And Muslims resist the Spirit as being a person too. There are ways to do it. So that's something to think about as a topic. The Holy Spirit's deity in the Old Testament. But he is really kind of a shadowy figure. So I love it if you fire questions, because it's a great opportunity for me. In fact, Vocab did that to me when I was on his show a little while ago. He just fired stuff at me that was coming from the feed, and I just answered it, and it was just a total blast. So it was good all the way around. Okay, well, there's that email. Oop, hey, wait a minute. But don't they get stuck? Doesn't it mean, if that's true, that man's nature would be God's image and the angel? Since there's even a better case, Roxby. You're right. One of the cool things in Hebrew is that both plural verbs are connected to God's name and singular. And so if you say, if it's the plural of majesty, then ask, why is it sometimes that singular verbs are connected with Elohim, and other times plural verbs are connected with Elohim in a similar proximity? The other thing is that Judaism doesn't have a real strong grasp on the distinction. I mean, it knows that angels are created beings, but what's different about angels is difficult. What do you do when animals get stuck on the meaning of words? Wow. It sounds a little general. If the anti-missionary is refusing to accept scholarly sources that indicate the words can mean something else, then I push those scholarly sources, if they're Jewish sources, and say, look, I didn't write it. Some of your own scholars have said it. And then you also have to point out that words mean something in the context. And you have to say, wait a minute now. Let's look at an example of any language, and a word is determined by its context too. For example, pierced. Oh, that's a fun one. Yes. Anti-missionaries hate pierced. Want to show on Zechariah? Because what you do is you'd look at other sources and other places that word's used. You'd also point out that there were Jewish sources that accepted that word as pierced in Zechariah and did not believe that it was anything else other than pierced. You can also look at the Targums, and you can even look at the Septuagint. Now, anti-missionaries will poo-poo the Septuagint, but you have to say, well, wait a minute, you know what? Like it or not, it was 70 Jews that translated the Bible. It wasn't 70 Christians. You also have to do some work with the Masoretic text, and we can discuss dealing with variants in the Masoretic text. But those are some things. Check your Targums, check your Talmud passages, look at other Jewish sources. If they say it's pierced, then you say to them, look, you know what? Your argument is between you and your scholars, not between me. Maybe you're just unfamiliar with Jewish sources. Why is that? Because Judaism downplayed hell, which is Gehenna. Sheol is used, but it's a little different. The other thing that you have is that Jewish salvation was always connected to the salvation of the nation. We talked about that corporate identity. The other thing is modern Jews just don't frankly like hell. But it's not a doctrine to be liked. It's a doctrine to be accepted, right? The Bible doesn't say everything you like. It says what you need to know. And you need to know that God indeed has a giant garbage bin for souls that have made themselves unusable for anything else. For the fist that is raised, there is only one place, the place of a raised fist. So a lot of it has to do with the formation. By the way, the rabbinical writings say a lot about hell. So if Jewish says to me, hell is something Christians came up to scare people, I say, well, let's look at your own writings. Do you know that according to rabbinical tradition, I, as a heretic, I'm doomed to hell? But most modern Jews aren't that blatant. So combination of changes in Judaism, and then just kind of historical developments. It isn't really a biblical thing. These are great questions, though. So I don't mind them. Reformed Judaism doesn't even have a heaven, per se. And remember, the Pharisees didn't have much of an afterlife. And so while they didn't prevail, they may have ended up having something to do with it somewhere. So. Ooh, it looks like there's more stuff there. Yes, modern well, this is a weird thing. Orthodox Judaism cannot get rid of the idea of blood sacrifice completely. Next week, if you want to start with a picture of some Orthodox Jewish guy swinging a chicken around his head, I can get that for you. Most likely. Modern Judaism downplays the sacrificial system, particularly the Reformed branch of Judaism. Reformed there means liberalized. Okay, but Reformed, it has to do with the history of Judaism. Do Orthodox Jews reject blood atonement? No, they believe that there are substitutions for blood atonement because there's no temple. That's a key point to bring up with your anti-missionary. You don't have an atonement. You don't. And if he says he does because the rabbis say he do, well then you say, okay, so which do you believe, the rabbis or the Torah? And if the oral law, which is the rabbis, the Talmud, disagrees with the Torah, then they can't be from the same God. Because they'll do that with the New Testament. You make them play by that rule. And you say, hey, look, if your writings don't match, then the same would be true of either the Tanakh or the Talmud. I can give you, let me give you a reference here. Yoma 5a, it's a Talmud tractate, and it states that without the shedding of blood, I'm sorry, I don't type so fast. I'm just typing this here to you real quick. No forgiveness of sin. Okay, now that's Yoma 5a. It's a Talmud tractate. And I can get you the exact statement out of it. But that's the Talmud. Hey, Tim Neeb is watching. We're finishing up, Tim. He just joined us on Facebook. But the PowerPoint is available on our website. And we did have some technical difficulties and got a little deep tonight. But it's still worth you checking out, and I'm so glad you joined us. I'm just taking some questions here from some folks. I've had some good ones. I'm talking to my Facebook audience for a year, because Facebook folks can go ahead and type questions. So, Becky, Yoma 5a, straight out of the Talmud, says that without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sin. So here's the question. Your Talmud says you need blood sacrifice. The rabbis say you no longer need blood sacrifice. Your Talmud doesn't seem to agree with itself, or at least adds information that seems inconsistent. And Yoma 5a is a reference back to Leviticus 17:11. So who gave anybody permission to change Torah? And if Torah can change, then why can't Messiah change Torah? Because they'll say that Jesus ended up abrogating the law, which is not allowed. That's a whole other show. Maimonides and the disallowance of abrogation of the law. So that gives us some material there. Excellent questions this evening. Well, I don't see any others. So I think we're going to get ready to wrap up. Tim, we discussed Metatron, the angel of the Lord, and the foundations for pre-trinitarian Jewish thinking. So you're going to want to catch that, and I am on regularly, and you can see what you think of that material. Well, folks, if there are any other questions, I'll take them. If not, you've got that email, zionsbanner@gmail.com. Oh, and any other ideas for shows? You can go ahead and put those. You can even take a question, and we'll make an entire show out of it, which is cool. Does driving really break the Sabbath? Yes, if you travel a certain distance, it breaks the Sabbath. It also breaks the Sabbath because you're kindling a fire, because it's an internal combustion car. Although conservative Jews allow you to drive to synagogue and Reformed Jews don't care, the Orthodox or very observant Jew would consider it breaking the Sabbath. That's why my grandfather lived near the synagogue, and we used to have to walk back from the synagogue to his house. So, hope that gets your question. So, well, we're going to start wrapping it up, but I look forward to more questions. Keep those coming if there's some topic. We could even discuss, ooh, this is a dangerous one. The Christian and the Sabbath. What about electric cars? Wow. You, you would be a good writer of halacha. Those are called rabbinical rules. Electric cars still create a spark. So you're still kindling a fire. Turning on the lights is kindling a fire. Nate was asking, does the driving on a car break the Sabbath according to Orthodox Jews? What about electric cars? Yes, that would break the Sabbath too, because it's kindling a flame. That's why Orthodox Jews have their lights on timers, because God, I always laugh at this, because like God can't figure out who set the timer before the Sabbath. Like if I like sin ahead of time, I can like get it written off because it's like pre-situational sin. Hey, thanks, Tim. I'd love to know what you think of it. So you can feel free to go ahead and Facebook me, and that would be great. Elevators. There's a cute trick in Israel. Someone asked if elevators were breaking the Sabbath. There's a cute trick in Israel. Make the elevator stop on every floor. There's a little switch. I saw it when I was in Israel. I thought it was so cool. There's a little switch, and they put it in Sabbath mode, and it stops on every floor. No, not according to rabbinical law, Roxby, because it was not the Sabbath when they set the timer. And the timer is already going when the Sabbath starts. The other trick was to have a Gentile turn on your lights and light your fire, and that Gentile was called the Sabbath Goy. Because, see, I didn't do anything. So, yeah, this is where you get into, like, the nitpickiness. So, no electricity usage during the Sabbath. That's one of the reasons Sabbath candles are lit. Here's the key, Nate. You got to start it before the Sabbath, and then it is just continued running, and you haven't kindled a fire before the Sabbath. The fire was already burning. So that's the way around it that the rabbis have come up with. There was a group called the Karaites under David Ben Ammon that rejected rabbinical law. It's like the Amish. Yeah, they don't have the same accent, and their barn racings aren't near as cool as the Amish, Roxby. Roxby was saying it was like the Amish, Tim. And I said, no, they don't have the cool barn raisings. So, but they do, the Jewish folks have better chicken soup than the Amish. So that's where that kind of comes in. Looking for loopholes? Because nobody can live this, Roxby. Nobody can live this way. There isn't a way to do it. And so they build fence around the law. Then they find that the fence keeps them from being able to live a normal life. And so now they got to work. Could you do a show on all the rules and loopholes that follow? I could do a show related to rabbinical law, but all the loopholes? I don't know of anybody, but we could discuss something like the Sabbath, what it was designed for, why God gave it to the children of Israel, and then talk about its value for the believer today. That would be perfectly acceptable if that would be of interest. Do they have other people drive them? That did occur, but not quite as often. But they could have other people drive them. That would be another way around it. Someone asked if other people driving a Jewish person on the Sabbath would be acceptable. That probably would be acceptable because the assumption is that a non-Jewish person is not obligated to keep the laws of Moses. By the way, just for Becky, do you know that the Jewish people felt that Gentiles were never obligated to keep the laws of Moses? Nishon Richardson, you would be interested in a show on the Sabbath, tracing it through, finding its relevant significance to believers, how it kind of worked for Israel, why it's given. I think I could probably put something together on the Sabbath and the believer and then talk about that because I do touch on that. I do realize that we could even do a show on the one law movement that wants to put Gentiles under the ceremonial forms of the law of Moses and why this is wrong, and it would have great tie-in to the Israelites. So what do you think about a show like this? Let me type this in and get people's opinions. Um, call the first one. Okay. So something about the law and the believer. How do we handle something like this might work for you guys? What do you think? I popped a suggestion up there. What do you think? Something like that, maybe? We could change it a little, but there's a sort of thing. It's right near what I'm doing my dissertation on, and we could discuss something like that. All right, Nishan likes that idea. Rebecca and Roxby, something like that, has good carryover for the Black Israelite movement, has carryover related to the One Law movement. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send that to myself somehow. I don't know. Is there a way? Hey, if someone could email me at, someone could email that title to me at Zion's Banner at Google, just as a way of reminder there, that would be absolutely great. What did I say there? The law and the believer. How do we handle the laws given to Israel? If someone can go ahead and email that to me. Okay, I lost. Okay, someone's responding to a comment that I didn't quite get. But if someone will email that title that I put up there to me via zionsbanner at gmail.com, we can go ahead and I could do that. And we'll see how far we get with that and spring off of that and go that way. So this has been really great. I love the interaction here. This is really, really cool. Oh, I think it was related to healing on the Sabbath. I think I just saw Roxby's comment, so that's okay. So, alrighty. Well, my throat's getting a little tired. You guys probably are too. We've been on for a while. But hey, I like the idea of planning together here and seeing what would be good. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off for tonight. But you got that email, so email the title I put up. You can tweak it a little. And you know, add your own 2 cents there, and we'll end up tackling things again next week. It is so good to have you guys on. Tell your friends, show them the PowerPoints, use the notes. The more the merrier. Okay, I will check my email, and I may be able to go back and look at this too, but I'm never quite sure how different venues connect. So thank you so much for doing that, though, Roxby. And I will check that out. So it was, yep. Shalom, Rebecca. It was great. It was great having you with us, Nate. Nashan, it was great having you on tonight. Thank you so much. Remember, Nishan, I think you're new. Go ahead and click the subscribe button, please, because we want to go ahead and keep increasing subscribers. So thank you so much, and feel free to go to the website and hit the join our team if you're interested in going ahead and doing that. We're trying to build back up our missionary support, so that's why I say that. Thanks much, and until next time, this has been Zion's Banner. Shalom, shalom. Thank you, Dave. Just had to get a thank you in there. Appreciate that. Good night.